I just record? Can I record? Your permission?
For your presentation.
Yeah, my presentation only. Yeah, sure.
كان يجب أن تستعد لهذا قبل الجلسة يا إبراهيم.
معليش معليش
كان يجب قبل الجلسة.
معليش.
الآن هذا وقت الجلسة تفضل.
طيب إن شاء الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سلام الله عليكم ورحمته وبركاته. It is a great honor for me basically to be here today, and I'm deeply, profoundly grateful to all my teachers who have come here to be part of this presentation. I'm very glad to present my thesis entitled Gender Sensitive Verses in the Quran, an analytical study of Amina Wadud and Asma Barlas hermeneutics. My name is Ibrahim Ilyasu Adam. Inshallah, I will try to present this thesis in light of the following items. Number one, the objective of the study. Why did I choose to write on Wadud and Barlas? The significance of the study, the contribution I hope to make, the methodology I have followed, the conclusion, and of course the recommendation. Well, which brings us to the first item on the list, which is the objective. The main objective of writing this thesis essentially is to examine gender-sensitive verses. And the keyword there is gender-sensitive verses, which literally refers to those verses with gender sensitivity and connotations, and frantically used by Muslim feminist scholars to advance gender equality within an Islamic framework by, of course, making special reference to some issues related to Islamic family law. So my thesis, inshallah, analyzes and critically assesses the methodology they have followed and examines to the extent they break with mainstream interpretation. Now, the big question, why did I choose to select these two feminist scholars? Well, my answer is simple. Basically, I have chosen to write on these two scholars for three reasons. Number one, their popularity and their influence. Of course, these are arguably two of the most influential feminists of our time, and perhaps for that reason, their books have been gaining wider currency, not only in the West, but in the Muslim world as well. And this explains why they have been translated into various or several languages of the world within those Tamil. So for example, Pakistani, Urdu, Dutch, Bengali, Indonesian, Spanish, and all that. So this tells us that these people indeed deserve attention. Second reason is that so far they have been the only feminist scholars who have proposed hermeneutical framework for challenging the status quo, challenging male interpreters, and not only that, they proposed their own reading, and third, they dedicated their major works in doing that. So these three reasons pushed me to think that these people really deserve attention, and for that reason I decided to write on them. Of course, Amina Wadud is a highly controversial figure. Is very known for her controversy in leading mixed gender congregation simply to attract attention. So for that reason, I found it necessary to combat what she is doing by dedicating my research to her. Of course, Asma Barlas is her follower, but this by no means is following her every step of the way. She has her own independent way of reading. Well, by the way, this is Amina Wadud and this is Asma Barlas. Perhaps the picture was taken way back in 2010 during one of international conferences on Islamic feminism in Germany. So this tells me that they are friends. So the central argument basically revolves around the question of text interpretation. Who had the authority to interpret the Quran? Is it man or woman? So what they essentially appear to be advocating is that the domain of traditional tafsir is overwhelmingly male-centric. In other words, traditional tafsir have been over the centuries been largely, decontextualized, distorted, manipulated, simply to oppress women. Why? The only reason is that, as she says, because they have been written by men. So for that reason, they found it necessary to not only challenge the status quo, but to ensure their active participation in the field by proposing their hermeneutics to regain their freedom, to prove their worth, and of course to establish their relevance. Which brings us to another important key issue, the significance of the study. I believe that this research is significant for three reasons. Number one, the existence of literature gap, wide literature gap in the field. I have no doubt that a considerable amount of literature has been written in the area of Islam, Quranic scholarship, more specifically in issues related to critiquing Orientalist enterprise and Quranic studies. The way they criticize ahadith, the way they criticize historical formulation, if you like, of Sharia. So, but based on my humble research, never before had any work been published to challenge Muslim feminist scholars, more specifically in areas related to gender-sensitive reading. So for that reason, I found it incredibly relevant to focus my work on them. Number two, I also believe that it is critically urgent to confront Muslim feminist scholars because of the gravity of the danger of what they are doing. These people are campaigning or are challenging the mainstream tafsir. So I found that their movement is...
We ask him to proceed to the methodology.
Okay.
Okay. Because only 20 minutes.
Okay,
The most
okay.
important thing
Okay,
is the methodology.
okay, inshallah. So I found that it is a potentially dangerous movement. Sorry, sir?
The primary issues, okay?
Yeah, inshallah.
Concentrate on methodology.
Okay. So I found that it is a potentially dangerous movement which we need to do something to combat it, no matter how little. Okay, this is the methodology. Well, in the course of my research, I focused on 5 segments. First, critical analysis of their approach. The hermeneutical approach of Muslim feminists are reflected in the works of these 2 scholars, while making special reference to their major works. Third, I analyzed the point of similarity and disparity between their methodology. Then I examined those gender-sensitive verses related to Islamic family law as reflected in their work. So, in so doing, I focused on some 5 verses. Verse number 1 is يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة خلق منها زوجها ولا تتمنوا ما فضل الله به بعضكم على بعض للرجال نصيب مما اكتسبوا وللنساء نصيب ما اكتسبوا. And of course, the most controversial and contentious verse used by Muslim feminists, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض. Well, the scope of the study, I have to admit that challenging Muslim feminists was never going to be easy, because there are people who have drawn their hermeneutics from various disciplines: Islamic thought, philosophy, anthropology, theology. So naturally, anyone who wants to respond to them must do the same. But of course, the limited nature of my research compelled me to refrain from delving into technicalities of these disciplines. So I focused exclusively only on those gender-sensitive verses. Okay, by extension, in the course of my analysis, I have identified 3 categories of feminists. There are some who only focus on Quran, like Wadud. There are some who extend their criticism beyond Quran to include Hadith and Sharia, like Asma Barlas. And of course, there are some who criticize only Hadith, like Marnisi. So this is Amina Wadud, and this is her book. And because of my methodology, I begin with what she used to established the principles of her hermeneutic. That is verse number 1 of Surah An-Nisa. يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اتَّقُوا رَبَّكُمُ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن نَّفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ وَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا. So she says that inasmuch as all human beings originate from same single soul, then they are all equal. I mean, men and women are equal in every respect. So with that, she has managed to dismiss a sexual hierarchy. So based on this principle, she further developed her argument. Based on that, I also use that as a pretext of my methodology to challenge her points one after another. So I moved to she used the premise to challenge the husband authority in as much as men and women are equal. So I examined what she meant by that. Destroy any connection in authority between husband and wife. Based on that, she argued that wife, for example, is not under any obligation to obey her husband. So I examined critically her reading and concluded that she was wrong. Polygyny, seclusion, and women leadership are also some interesting points she raised, which I responded to. I now moved on to Asma Barlas, and this is Asma Barlas, by the way, and this is her book, Believing Women in Islam. Unlike Wadud, she adopted different approach, and for that reason, I used methodology in my engagement with her. So, in dealing with her, I focused much on a hadith. Why? Because Asma Barlas essentially is part of those Muslim feminist scholars who criticize hadith. They are anti-hadith. So she challenges the authority of hadith as a powerful tool of tafsir. She also criticized historical formulation of Islamic law over the centuries. Then she moved on to other relevant issues. So in my methodology, I followed and responded accordingly based on what she presented. So by comparison, it is evident that both Asma Barlas and Wadud have managed to challenge the Muslim interpreters of the Quran, but they adopted a different methodology. And for that reason, I also adopted a different approach in my engagement with them. But by comparatively, Amina Wadud's methodology is much more easier, more systematic, much more sophisticated. For that reason, because her book is handy, it's just a couple of 100 pages, while Barlas' argument is increasingly complex, difficult to follow. Her book is bulky, and of course it's largely repetitive. So because she, touched various issues. So in my conclusion, I found that both feminists, Asma Barlas and Amina Wadud, they might have good intention in what they are doing. But the blueprints they set in challenging Muslim interpreters send a very, wrong signal, so to speak. So for that reason, no matter how good their intention is, it might be misconstrued as a quite insincere, cynical attempt to just, challenge the status quo or just to challenge male. So for that reason, I understand that Amina Wadud is much more flexible than Barlas. Barlas is more aggressive, in her approach. And I said both. So I concluded that both Asma Barlas and Amina Wadud, they were wrong in their approach for the following reasons. Number one, lack of engagement with authentic sources of tafsir, deviation from sound and well-established principle of interpretation, lack of deep understanding of the intended meaning of the verses and its application, that is madlulat al-ayah, عدم العناية بمدلولات الآية, and forcing their own reading into the Quran to justify their, discourse. Ironically, they found themselves doing what they accused male exegetes in doing. And finally, disregarding the principles of tafsir and failing to apply them in their reading. Finally, I have some recommendations for further research. Of course, challenging Muslim feminist scholars, I have to admit, is not our one-man task. So I believe that my humble contribution presumably might likely be the first attempt of its kind, but more research needs to be done. But I'm proposing that in the course of doing further research, we need to begin by acknowledging the hard truth that patriarchy or suppression of women really exists. It really exists in the Muslim community. It is a reality very hard to ignore. So we need to begin with self-assessment, self-criticism, internal criticism, and of course go beyond self-denial. But the problem with that oppression of women originates not from patriarchal reading or male interpretation, but from culture. It's more of cultural. So we need to do that. We need to write more research on that. Proposing new ways of addressing women issues within an Islamic paradigm rather than adopting new feminist hermeneutics. We agree that women have issues, have problems, need to be solved, but rather than adopting new methodology for reinterpreting Quran, we need to do something about that. Acknowledgement, finally, they say, to whom much is given, much is expected. And انطلاقا من قول الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يشكر الله من لا يشكر الناس. So I'm deeply أريد أن أشدد شكري للعلماء الذين I'm deeply indebted to International Islamic University Malaysia for at least giving me a chance to study here for the last 4 years, providing a conducive atmosphere. I'm also particularly thankful to Center for Postgraduate Studies for organizing this meeting. Of course, my main supervisor, Dr. Muhammad Shahjani, thank you, sir, for all your time. I'm deeply, profoundly grateful to you for what you have done to me over the last 4 years. I'm deeply comforted by your legacy of patience, dedication, and commitment. I have benefited hugely from your wealth of experience, sir. Thank you, may Allah reward you. I still remember last January when we spent 2 to 3 hours reading the final draft from the beginning to the end. Thank you, sir. Okay. My internal supervisor, external supervisors, professors, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I have no doubt that you have a lot of engagement, commitment, but still you managed to take your time and go through my thesis and make your observations. Professor Israr, Jazakallah khair for your time and for your contribution into my draft. The last 2 years when I presented the draft of my proposal, you benefited me a lot. Thank you very much. Friends and colleagues, Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa
rahmatullahi. Thank you very much, Brother Ibrahim, for the presentation, and also you took the time. That's good. And as you know, the committee spent a lot of time reading your thesis.
Correct.
Now they have some questions
Correct.
for you.
Exactly.
Inshallah, I will follow this. We'll start with the external examiners. Prof. بإذنك. نبدأ بالبروفيسور associate professor Dr. Muhammad Mustaqim. Just to ask the students.
Okay.
It's up to you. And inshallah we will make it only one round.
Yeah, okay, no, one round enough.
Just
Everything's prepared. Okay, thank you very much for Dr. Fuad.
Mustaqim is expert.
because
He knows what to do.
because he is Mustaqim.
Inshallah. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Fuad, Rais Al-Jilsa, and my respected Professor Israr, and also Associate Professor Dr. Ashraf, Dr. Shahjani, and also for our student, Brother Ibrahim, yes, Ibrahim. Okay, in my opinion, yes, what I have read based on the title of the thesis and also what I have read of it, I commend it. It's a very commendable thesis. It's a very good thesis. It's a very good attempt to discuss this issue, which is a very contemporary issue that is facing us. I think this, if you can see, it's a disease as of liberalism. You know, it's like it's spreading like a virus, and then everywhere you go, I mean, this thing. And of course, before they were only using the philosophical approach, but now they are moving towards the Quranic, also the Quranic interpretation, and by reviving the Quranic interpretation, and then they can say they can justify it. Now, of course, regarding the typological and other things, I think later on I will give you a copy of this, and then you can just